In this video, we are going to discuss about constructors in Python OOP, right? So constructor is a special method. So it's categorized under methods, but it's considered as a special kind of a method. So the important thing when it comes to a constructor is that when the constructor, when object is created from a class, object is created from a particular class, what happens, this constructor will be called, right? So that something happens automatically, right? No matter what's the object that you are going to create, at the same time, when the object is created, the constructor will be called, right? For example, now the constructor, you have to define the constructor as I mentioned in the previous video, the double underscores, then init, then again another double underscores, and then parentheses, right? So if you take this constructor that we have in this one, the earlier example, so here the constructor simply, once this constructor is called, the variables, these instance variables are initialized 0 and it prints the constructor is called. So we can get this confirm, right? So I create three objects from the rectangle class. So you can see it prints that the constructor is called 3 times. That means each time this function is called, so we can confirm it, right? So that means whenever you are going to create an object, the constructor will be called. So this is a very important property when it comes to a constructor. So this property can be used for several things. For example, now, when the constructor is declared, you can add some parameters like this, okay, WH. So here we are in the rectangle class. So I'm going to add some parameters like width and height for the purpose of taking the width and height when the rectangle is created from the main function, right? So here we have add two parameters like the width and height. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to when the rectangle object is created, I'm going to pass 10 and 20. So what happens simply, this 10 and 20 simply will be passed to W and then H. So in this method, when you are going to create a object from a class, right, you can pass some parameters and you can assign some arguments or parameters in the constructor definition where we can take values from the main. So this is a very important thing. So the constructor can be used to pass parameters to the object when an object is created, right? Now, you know that the self is definitely should be there in any method, in all the methods in the class, right? But these two, we are going to add as two parameters. So those will be passed to W and H respectively. So what we can do here, we can take this width and assign it to self width, and we can get this height and assign it to self dot height, right? So what happens here? So if you run this, and I'm going to pass 10 and 20. So you know, as I mentioned, this will be assigned to W, and this 30 will be assigned to H. Thereafter, when we call the find area, now you know 10 and 20 are 10 and 30 are assigned to the width and height. So the area will be calculated and perimeter will be also calculated, and we are expecting the print details to check, see the width, height, area, and the perimeter, right? So if you run this one, when you are going to run this one, you can see that width, height, and these things are assigned like this. So we can confirm then when these parameters are passed like this, so this will be passed to W and H respectively. So this is the important property when it comes to a constructor. The constructor is a special function when, what's the specialty? When an object is created, that a constructor will be called automatically. So that property can be used to pass parameters from the main function to the inside the object. So we can pass values like this and make sure that you have appropriate variables to take those values passed from the main in the constructor, right? Okay. Yeah, so as I mentioned, okay, so for example, now we have two parameters here. Now if we have two parameters like this, now you can't call the you can't create a rectangle object now without passing parameters. Now what we did earlier in this very first example, we had the constructor empty, like only the self. We haven't got any parameter from the main, right? So in that case, we can call the constructor like this. But once some parameters are added to the constructor definition, then you can't call the, I mean, you can't create objects by just calling the rectangle class like this. So you are going to get an error. It says that init missing two required positional argument for W and H. So that means definitely we have to pass some parameters like this to the function, I mean the constructor, when we are calling it. But what we can do, we have a option here. I think you can remember the default arguments and the keyword arguments when we discussed about functions under the basic Python programming tutorial. So what we can do, we can assign some default value to this W and H, or the width and height, and we can keep it like this. So what happens here, now the width is 0, then height is 0. So when we are going to pass some values 10 and 20, definitely it will do something like that, something like this. The 10 will be passed to width and the 20 will be passed to height. So the 0 will be replaced, right? You can see 10 and 20 height and width, and the area and perimeter, everything is as we expected. But here now, you can call it like this as well. But earlier this gives an error, but since we have included some default variables, I mean, default values here, you are not going to experience any error here. So it works perfectly. Since we are not passing any value here, what happens simply, it assigns the width and height to 0 without giving an error, right? So that's how you are going to use a constructor. So there will be only one constructor per class, but you can have several instances, right? So you can call it like this, right? Or even you can call it from the keyword, right? And also, like, you can only pass, I mean, this makes no sense, but you can pass only the height, right? So in that case, the width remains 0, right? So you know the default and the keyword arguments, we discussed this in under the basic Python tutorial, right? So you can see only the height is assigned, right? So you can use the constructor now in any you can call the constructor, you can create objects without passing objects, or with passing one value, or without passing all the with passing all the values, right? Likewise, you can use any options there. So but the most important thing, that a single class can contain only a single constructor, right? Okay, so next video we are going to discuss about class variable and implement some examples. Thank you very much.